The drizzle had finally stopped, but the air still hung heavy, thick with the scent of wet wool from old sweaters drying by the stove and the rich, damp earth of the pasture. John, his back aching slightly from a day of fence mending, was just heading towards the barn for a well-earned mug of something hot when the sky didn't just rip. It shrieked. It wasn't thunder, not a jet, but a sound that clawed at your teeth, rattling the very bones of his farmhouse. He dropped the rusty hammer, the clang echoing eerily in the sudden, profound silence that followed. Then he saw it. Not a meteor, though it felt like one. An impossible silhouette against the bruised twilight, spiraling erratically, leaving a trail of shimmering, unstable air. It slammed into his back 40 with a sickening crunch that made the ground beneath his boots tremble. A cloud of steam and pulverized soil billowed upwards, carrying the sharp, metallic tang of ozone. From the mangled wreck, a hatch hissed open, disgorging 3 figures. Gangly there forms a shimmering tapestry of blue and silver chitin. They moved with an unsettling fluidity, their multifaceted eyes sweeping the desolate landscape. Their voices, a cacophony of clicks and whistles, abruptly coalesced into something approximating English. Human, we bring dire tidings. Your world, it faces annihilation, cataclysm, total planetary collapse within cycles. The lead alien, its voice strained, seemed to sag, its intricate limbs trembling. It gestured wildly towards the angry, roiling clouds now gathering on the horizon. Not a natural storm, but something darker, faster. John didn't panic. He just stood there, wiping a greasy hand across his jaw. He squinted at the wrecked starship, then at the terrified aliens whose very posture spoke of absolute, unyielding despair. Annihilation? He kicked at a loose stone near his boot, the small thud barely audible. Annihilation, huh? He chewed on the inside of his cheek. Seen worse. He finally said the words, a low rumble in his chest. What's the plan, then? The lead alien, which he mentally filed as Bluey, recoiled. Its faceted eyes seemed to bulge even further. Plan? Our vessel is crippled. The atmospheric shifts alone will shred this continent within mere solar cycles. Our mission was to warn, to observe the end. There's no plan. John snorted, a puff of condensed breath visible in the chill air. Right. So you flew all this way to tell me the sky's falling, then plan to sit around watching it happen. Look, you got anything on that ship that's, I don't know, good for sealing a breach? Or maybe a communications array that ain't slagged? There's a whole lot of metal here that looks like it could be repurposed. He wasn't waiting for an answer. Already his eyes scanned the jagged edges of the wreck, assessing damage, his brain mapping out potential solutions to problems the aliens hadn't even realized were problems. The unique metallic tang of ozone mixed with the damp earth, an oddly comforting scent to him, a smell of work that needed doing. He started walking towards the ship, not with a scientist's awe, but with a mechanic's grim determination. This isn't my first rodeo with things breaking, he muttered, more to himself than to the stunned aliens. Usually it's a tractor, not a starship, but the principles are pretty universal. You identify the problem, find the tools, and you get to work. The 3 aliens exchanged frantic, clicking glances, their earlier pronouncements of doom forgotten in the face of this incomprehensible reaction. They had expected screaming, perhaps ritualistic self-destruction, or at least existential despair. Not this. Not a human. Smelling faintly of pipe tobacco and wet wool, already sizing up their impossible situation, as if it were a leaky faucet or a broken generator. Their meticulously calculated warning, designed for maximum psychological impact, had landed with the weight of a damp leaf. The metallic tang of ozone, sharp and acrid, now mingled with the familiar scent of damp earth and John's own sweat as he approached the wreckage. The ship, or what was left of it, loomed over his pasture, a hulking, unnatural scar. Jagged plating, iridescent in the dimming light, jutted out at impossible angles. Steam still hissed from rupture points, a sound like a giant, angry cat. The 3 aliens, Their intricate forms, still shimmering with nervous energy, had retreated a few paces, their multifaceted eyes locked on the developing atmospheric chaos. "It is beyond repair, human," one of them, the one John mentally labeled Bluey, shrieked, its voice a rapid series of clicks and whistles that grated on the ears. "Our structural integrity matrices are compromised. The primary energy conduits are fractured. The very alloy is weeping energy." John ignored him. He ran a calloused hand over a section of plating that had peeled back like a banana skin, revealing layers of shimmering, impossibly thin circuitry beneath. It felt smooth, cool, almost alive to the touch. He pressed a thumb against a small, detached shard of the material, a piece no bigger than his thumbnail. It was unnervingly light, yet felt strong, rigid. The surface was a complex lattice, reflecting the last vestiges of twilight like a scattered rainbow. He frowned. What was this stuff? He brought it closer, examining its edges, then, out of pure habit, touched it to his tongue. A jolt. Not electric, but a sensation. It tasted like cold steel, mixed with something incredibly alien, like a breath drawn from a deep, foreign ocean, salty and mineral, yet with a strange, almost sweet undertone. It was the taste of a distant star, a forgotten nebula, a secret that hummed beneath the tongue. He pulled it away, his brow furrowed in concentration. Bluey and its companions stared, their body language a tableau of utter, uncomprehending horror. One of them, its eye stalks rotating wildly, emitted a high-pitched keening sound. He ingested the whole material. It's infused with localized quantum flux. It's highly unstable. He will unravel. John just grunted, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. Unravel? Bit dramatic, ain't we? Tastes like iron, mostly, and a bit like that fancy sea salt my sister bought once. Anyway, doesn't matter what it tastes like, it's got to be good for something. He pointed with the shard towards a larger, still glowing rupture in the ship's side. What's that? A power source. Can we tap into it? The aliens' reaction was a new level of panic. Their chitinous plates flared, and their voices rose in a chorus of terrified chirps. Tap into it? Human. That is the core regulator. It contains enough destructive potential to incinerate a small moon. And you touch it with your bare hand? You tasted our hull? This dimension? This cannot be real. This is a nightmare construct. John merely gave them a look that clearly communicated his opinion on their theatrics. Look, if it can incinerate a moon, it can probably power my shed, or at least a few welding torches. Right now, what we need is juice. Lots of it. And some way to stop that thing from leaking whatever quantum flux is. He moved towards the gaping wound in the ship, his steps firm, pragmatic. His eyes weren't filled with scientific curiosity or cosmic dread, but with the practical assessment of a man who needed to fix a hole in a very expensive, very dangerous bucket. The sky above them continued to darken, the roiling clouds now flashing with unnatural light, a silent promise of the doom the aliens had foretold. But John wasn't looking at the sky. He was looking at the wreckage, at the problem right in front of him. Because some folks, when faced with the end of the world, just see a whole lot of work that needs doing. It's not bravery, not exactly, it's just how humans are built. The first thing John noticed wasn't the chill in the pre-dawn air, or the lingering metallic scent from the crashed ship, but the absolute, crushing silence. No cicadas from the fields, no hoot of an owl from the distant woods. Most unnerving of all, no birdsong. Not even the earliest, most optimistic robin. Just a vast, empty hush that pressed in on the ears, heavier than the bruised sky overhead. It was a silence that screamed. He'd been working through the night, fueled by lukewarm coffee and pure, unadulterated stubbornness. His hands, calloused from a lifetime of farm work, now held a crude, heavy-duty insulated cable, the kind meant for jump-starting a tractor, that he was attempting to snake into a shimmering, pulsating conduit on the alien vessel. The quantum flux regulator, Bluey had called it, before dissolving into a fit of shuddering clicks that morning. Human, you cannot simply reroute a core energy conductor with that. Bluey's voice, now less a shriek and more a desperate whisper, vibrated through the crisp air. It, along with its two companions, huddled just outside the danger zone, their complex eyes fixed on John's every move with a mixture of terror and grotesque fascination. That cable of yours lacks the necessary molecular density to contain the output. It will simply vaporize. John grunted, wiggling the cable end into a slot that was clearly never designed for anything so earthly. Sweat beaded on his brow, mingling with grease and dirt. The alien tech hummed with an unsettling, resonant thrum, a sound that bypassed his ears and vibrated directly in his teeth. It felt like standing too close to a high-tension power line, but 1,000 times more intense. Vaporize, huh? Well, we'll see. It's got good insulation, best I could find. And this isn't exactly high-grade alien cabling you guys left lying around, is it? He tugged, testing the connection. A shower of tiny, iridescent sparks erupted, making the aliens flinch back as one. "This is madness!" Another alien, its limbs trembling, managed to articulate. "Our systems registered atmospheric dissolution, reaching critical levels in the northern hemisphere cycles ago. The equatorial band shows signs of lithospheric fracturing. And you are connecting an unstable energy source with a primitive transfer medium." "Primitive gets the job done sometimes," John countered, not looking up. He reached for a heavy wrench he'd salvaged from his truck, using its weight to hammer the connector firmly into place. The resounding thunk echoed strangely in the profound silence of the dawn. The light from the core regulator flared, then stabilized, a low, steady thrum replacing the earlier erratic pulses. The insulated cable, surprisingly, held. It glowed faintly, a soft orange, but it held. He stood back, wiping his hands on his grimy overalls, a small sigh escaping his lips. There, that should siphon off enough juice to stop the bleeding, and maybe even get some of your secondary systems online. Now, about that comms array you mentioned, the aliens looked from the glowing, tractor cable-connected alien core to John, then to the sky, which now pulsed with an unsettling violet light. The planetary catastrophe they had foreseen was unfolding, slow and inexorable, a cosmic horror beyond their understanding. Yet this human, with his crude tools and unshakable will, was simply fixing it, or at least fixing a piece of it. Their voices were hushed, tinged with a new alien kind of dread. This is not natural. This dimension, it defies all logic. The beings here, they simply refuse to acknowledge the impossible. John just shrugged. The morning silence still unnerved him, but there was a job to do. When the world ends, it doesn't always go out with a bang. Sometimes, it just needs a good, solid repair. And humans, well, they're pretty good at fixing things, even when they're not supposed to be fixable. The air wasn't just cold anymore. It was biting, sharp with a metallic tang that now seemed permanently etched into the atmosphere around John's farm. He was elbow-deep in the mangled remnants of the alien ship's communications array, trying to make sense of circuits that pulsed with light instead of carrying current, and connections that seemed to defy the laws of solid geometry. A fine, almost invisible dust, shimmering with an alien luminescence, coated everything. Suddenly, a low, guttural rumble started, deep in the earth, shaking the very bones of the pasture. It wasn't a steady tremor, but an irregular, gasping sound, like something impossibly vast and ancient clearing its throat. Tremble, HRRNNNG, rumble. It echoed, vibrated through John's teeth, and made the loose tools clatter around him. The three aliens, still huddled near the farmhouse, emitted a collective, distressed chittering. What in the void was that? Bluey shrieked, its multifaceted eyes wide with renewed terror, its chitinous limbs quivering. "Our geological sensors are indicating planetary stress fractures. The mantle itself is convulsing. It is the sound of your world. D'ing." The cough, repeated, louder this time, a deep, resonant shudder that nearly knocked John off his feet. John steadied himself against the cold metal, a grunt of annoyance escaping his lips. Dying? Sounds more like it's got a bad cough, he muttered, wiping a streak of iridescent grime from his cheek. Happens. Old machinery rattles and groans before it gives up the ghost. Or maybe it's just the lithospheric fracturing you mentioned earlier. Doesn't matter. Still got to get this thing talking. He pointed with a grease-stained finger at a cluster of flickering, crystalline conduits. Any chance this connects to a power input that doesn't require me to stick a tractor battery to it? Another alien, its voice trembling, chimed in, "Human, you do not comprehend. This is the sound of cosmic entropy. The gravitational fields are warping. We are detecting anomalies in space-time itself. This is not a cough. This is the end." John snorted, his breath condensing in the frigid air. "End of the world. End of my patience. Either way, doesn't get this communications array fixed. If we can't get a signal out, we're stuck here listening to your planet choke itself to death." He picked up a pair of heavy-duty pliers, an everyday tool in his world, but in this alien context it looked ridiculously crude against the impossibly delicate wiring. He started to snip, carefully isolating a sparking, unstable junction. The cough rumbled again, closer, stronger, rattling the farmhouse windows. "Just because it sounds like a dying beast doesn't mean it moon," as John continued, talking as much to himself as to the terrified aliens. "Sometimes you just gotta whack it in the right place, or bypass a jammed valve. Happens with engines, happens with water pumps. Probably happens with planets too, for all I know." He connected 2 glowing wires with a piece of insulated copper salvaged from his own shed, twisting them together with practiced, calloused fingers. The alien components shimmered, a brief surge, then a steady, reassuring hum began to emanate from the comms array. A small, green light flickered to life. The aliens watched, speechless, as the sound of their planetary doom echoed around them. This human, this stubborn, pragmatic creature, was just bypassing the end of the world. He was using pliers and copper wire to fix a device that should have been irrevocably lost to physics, all while the planet audibly struggled for its last breath. "It worked," Bluey whispered, a note of utter disbelief in its voice. "He fixed it, while the world coughs, because that's the human way. When the whole damn world starts to fall apart and sounds like it's got a terminal illness, some people don't see an apocalypse. They just see a really big, really complicated broken machine." The air, thin and sharp, felt like breathing crushed ice now, yet a strange, pervasive warmth emanated from the very ground. John was bent over the comms array, the small green light he'd coaxed into life still blinking steadily, but the signal strength indicator was a chaotic, flickering mess. He needed a clearer path through the churning, violet-tinged atmosphere, or a stronger antenna. His gloved fingers, calloused and thick, fumbled with a salvaged satellite dish from his barn, trying to jury-rig it to the shimmering alien tech. Suddenly, a choked gasp cut through the low hum of the alien systems and the distant, sporadic rumbling of the Earth. He looked up. Bluey, the lead alien, its intricate form usually shimmering with nervous energy, was slumped against the side of the farmhouse, its multifaceted eyes glazed over. Its chitinous plates, usually a cool blue, now pulsed with an unnatural, sickly orange glow. The other 2 aliens were retreating further, chittering with growing distress, their own forms showing subtle, similar shifts in color. "Hey, you all right there, Bluey?" John asked, his voice gruff with concern. He started towards the alien, dropping the satellite dish with a clatter. Bluey let out another pained gurgle, its complex limbs twitching erratically. Its body spasmed, then went rigid. John reached out, his hand instinctively going to the alien's shoulder, a gesture of human comfort and assessment. The instant his gloved palm made contact, a shock went through him. Not electric, but an intense, radiating heat. It was like touching a stove burner left on low, or a car engine after a long drive. But this wasn't just hot. It was a deep, fundamental heat that seemed to hum beneath the alien's surface, a dry, feverish warmth that felt entirely wrong for its normally cool, metallic texture. It wasn't just the alien's skin that was hot. It was everything. "By the stars, human, do not make direct contact," one of the remaining aliens shrieked, its voice now edged with genuine fear, not just for its companion, but for John. Its internal regulatory systems are failing. The atmospheric destabilization is causing cellular breakdown. It is radiating pure thermal energy. You will ignite. John ignored the warning, his brow furrowed in concentration. He pulled his hand back, shaking it slightly, not from pain, but from the sheer unexpected intensity of the heat. Ignite? Nah, just warm. But you're right, that's not normal. He frowned, looking at Bluey's trembling form. Feels like a bad fever. Or maybe its internal cooling system is on the fritz. He glanced around, his eyes scanning the bleak landscape, then settling on his own water pump. All right, let's get you inside, Bluey. Gotta cool you down. He bent down, attempting to hoist the surprisingly heavy kittinous alien. It was an awkward, ungainly process. Bluey was taller than him, and its limbs seemed to go in all the wrong directions, but John's stubborn strength, honed by years of hauling feed sacks and fixing fences, prevailed. He grunted with effort, half carrying, half dragging the overheated alien towards the open door of his farmhouse, the unnaturally hot alien's skin, a constant, unsettling presence against his own body. The remaining aliens watched, their multifaceted eyes wide with a terror that transcended language. Their companion was dying, dissolving from within by forces beyond their comprehension, and this human was treating it like a common fever, like a piece of overheating machinery. They had warned him of planetary collapse, of cosmic entropy, and he was offering a glass of water. This wasn't just stubbornness, they realized. This was a complete, fundamental rejection of doom. This human, this impossible creature, didn't understand the apocalypse because it didn't compute as something you just canoseta happen. You fixed it, or you took care of those affected. It was simply what you did. Inside the farmhouse, the air was thick with the smell of old wood, damp earth tracked in from the fields, and now, a faint, metallic scent radiating from Bluey. The alien lay stretched awkwardly on an old canvas tarp John had thrown down in the middle of his kitchen floor. Its chitinous plates still pulsed with that unsettling, sickly orange glow, and the radiating heat was palpable, warming the small room like a malfunctioning space heater. John was kneeling beside it, a wet, rough washcloth, one he usually used to wipe down tools, pressed to the alien's intricate head. He'd tried a bucket of cold well water first, but it had hissed and steamed on contact with Bluey's body, evaporating almost instantly. He'd settled for a slow, steady drip from the kitchen tap into a small pan, soaking the rag repeatedly. Each time he reapplied the damp cloth, a faint sizzle accompanied a wisp of vapor, like water on a hot griddle. This is futile. Human, one of the remaining aliens, whom John had mentally dubbed Greenie due to its less intense, almost verdant luminescence, chittered from the doorway. It and the other alien, Silvery, stood frozen just inside, their multifaceted eyes fixed on Bluey's struggling form and John's utterly mundane efforts. The thermal regulation systems are internally compromised. The atmospheric decay outside is accelerating. There is no cooling down from a planetary unraveling. John just grunted, dipping the cloth again. Atmospheric decay or not, he's got a fever, and you treat a fever by cooling it down. He wiped a smear of iridescent fluid from Bluey's brow ridge. The alien let out a low, shuddering moan, a sound that was less a groan of pain and more a vibration of internal distress. What do you mean, planetary unraveling? Is the whole planet getting hot? Greenie seemed to recoil, its form flickering with agitated light. Yes, the core is destabilizing. The gravitational forces are fluctuating. We register space-time anomalies. The very fabric of your reality is tearing. It gestured wildly towards the window, where the outside world was now bathed in a chaotic, swirling purple light. And you apply a damp cloth. John paused, looking at the steaming rag in his hand, then back at Greenie. Well, what else am I supposed to do? Give him an aspirin? I don't know what alien painkillers look like, and I doubt you brought a pharmacy. He frowned, his gaze shifting to the farmhouse's old, wood-burning stove, still emitting a faint, residual warmth. Maybe a cold compress isn't cutting it. What about total immersion? Silvery, which had been silent, let out a piercing shriek. Total immersion? Human, that is the most barbaric suggestion. Its delicate biological mechanisms will seize. Its inner workings will be irrevocably damaged. You propose to drown it? Drown? No, not drown. Just get the temperature down faster, John said, a new thought dawning. He stood up, his gaze sweeping the kitchen, then out the back door. Got a stock tank out back, big enough for a cow. Should be big enough for Bluey. The aliens, Greeny and Silvery, exchanged horrified glances. The scene unfolding before them was beyond any logical framework. Their advanced companion was succumbing to the cosmic entropy of a dying world, and this, human, was proposing to submerge it in what they could only assume was a crude, frigid bath of unknown chemical composition. Each pragmatic, stubborn action of John was like a bead slipping through their fingers, a hope for understanding vanishing with every passing impossible moment. This was not a planet. This was an active, malevolent dreamscape, because for humans, when the universe throws an impossible problem at you, the answer isn't always complex science or existential dread. Sometimes it's just plain old common sense, a bit of elbow grease, and the unshakable belief that even the most catastrophic disaster can be tackled, one ridiculously simple step at a time. The sound wasn't new. It had started as an occasional deep thrum, like distant thunder, but now it was a constant, resonant bong, asterisk, that vibrated through the very soles of John's boots. It wasn't loud enough to deafen, but it was inescapable, a deep, rhythmic tolling that seemed to come from the deepest parts of the earth, echoing off the darkening, bruised sky. It felt less like a sound, and more like a physical presence, pressing on his chest, rattling his teeth, a non-stop, monotonous drumbeat of planetary death. He was in his barn, wrestling with a length of heavy chain, trying to figure out how to rig a makeshift anchor point for the alien comms array he'd partially resurrected. The wind outside howled, carrying the metallic scent of the crashed ship and the growing chill. Bluey, still pale, but no longer radiating heat like a portable supernova, was resting inside the farmhouse, shivering occasionally, wrapped in one of John's oldest, scratchiest blankets. Greeny and Silvery, however, were huddled in the barn's doorway, their forms flickering with raw, escalating panic. "Human, do you not hear it?" Greeny shrieked, its clicks and whistles frantic, almost drowned out by the relentless bong bong bong. "That is the sound of your world's demise. Our instruments confirm it. It is the gravitational harmonics failing. The very core of this planetary body is asterisk ringing itself apart. It is a death knell, a cosmic, inescapable toll." John grunted, straining against the heavy chain. Yeah, I hear it. Sounds like someone left a bell ringing in a really big church, only underground." He wiped sweat from his brow, ignoring the alien's dramatics. "Annoying, isn't it? Makes it hard to concentrate. Think I've got a pair of earplugs somewhere in my toolbox if you want 'em." He yanked the chain tight, testing its strength. It groaned but held. Silvery, its usually stoic demeanor shattered, began to pace erratically, its limbs brushing against stacks of hay with frantic energy. "Earplugs? This is not a nuisance, human. This is the sound of reality itself fragmenting. Each bong signifies a phase shift in the quantum fabric. We are detecting subspace ruptures coinciding with each toll. The very dimensions are collapsing around us." "Well, that sounds like a problem for later, doesn't it?" John said, retrieving a length of rope. "Right now, the problem is that comms array is wobbling in this wind, and if it falls, we're back to square one. And if the dimensions are collapsing, maybe a stronger anchor will help keep it from falling through one." He started tying a knot, a complex, secure hitch that had held countless loads on his farm. His fingers moved with practiced efficiency, a stark contrast to the apocalyptic pronouncements of the aliens. The bong, bong. Bong asterisk continued, ceaseless, a deafening rhythm that seemed to synchronize with the beat of John's own heart. The air outside grew colder still, yet crackled with an unnatural energy. The sky, a swirling vortex of deep purples and angry reds, pulsed with each resonant bong, as if the planet itself was a drum, beaten by an unseen, merciless hand. The aliens watched him, a single, horrifying truth sinking into their alien consciousness. This human, this primitive creature, did not feel awe or terror at the sound of his own world breaking apart. He felt annoyance. He heard the final, cosmic symphony of destruction and simply found it distracting. Because for humans, when the world starts to sing its death song, some of them just find it rude. They don't have time for cosmic drama. There's always another knot to tie, another repair to make, another stubborn reason to keep going, even when every fiber of reality is screaming for them to stop. It's not a lack of understanding. It's a fundamental, terrifying refusal to acknowledge that some things can't be fixed. The relentless bong 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 asterisk that pulsed from the earth had gained a sinister companion. Now, beneath the steady tolling, a new sound had begun. A low, guttural asterisk gryan rumble. It wasn't the sharp crack of breaking rock or the deep thrum of distant thunder. This was something heavier, slower, like massive, rusted gears grinding against each other, or the agonizing drag of something impossibly weighty being pulled across a stone floor. It felt like the very bones of the world were being dragged to their final resting place, the groan of a cosmic corpse cart's wheels. John, still outside, was trying to anchor the salvaged comms array more securely to a stout oak tree, its ancient roots digging deep into the increasingly unstable ground. He drove a thick, rusty bolt into the trunk, each hammer blow punctuated by the planet's grinding death rattle. The sky above was a tempest of bruised purples and angry swirling reds, twisting like a knot tightening around the world. Human. That sound. It is the tectonic plates. They are grinding to a halt. The core's rotation is ceasing. We are detecting massive seismic shearing across entire continents. Greenie shrieked, its form flickering violently with agitated light. It and Silvery were clinging to the corner of the barn, their multifaceted eyes darting from the terrifying sky to John, who seemed utterly oblivious to the magnitude of the event. This is the sound of planetary death, John. The final, agonizing shudder. John grunted, wrenching the bolt tighter. Sounds like the old tractor when its transmission fluid gets low. Lot of grinding, no going anywhere. He wiped a smear of tree sap and cosmic grime from his forehead. Need some grease, probably. Or a new bearing. But either way, it's not helping me get this bolt in. He kicked at a small fissure that had opened near his boot, a thin line of red earth bleeding from it. Just means the ground's getting a bit shifty. Silvery, usually the most composed, was now practically vibrating with a silent internal scream. Shifty? Human, your continents are tearing themselves apart. We are receiving reports from orbital relays of massive fissures appearing in the oceanic crust. This grinding is the sound of your world being ripped asunder, like some ancient colossal machine being slowly, agonizingly broken. Well, if it's breaking, we better get a signal out while there's still something left to send a signal from, John countered, his voice firm, unwavering. He stepped back, assessing his work. The comms array, now lashed securely to the tree, swayed less in the chaotic wind. See? Better. Less chance of it tipping over when the next big rumble comes. He gave the tree a solid pat. Good old oak. Seen worse, I bet. The asterisk gray-end rumble intensified, a wave of palpable vibration rolling through the ground, making the oak tree itself visibly shiver. Fine dust, mixed with something glittering and alien, puffed up from the cracks, tasting of iron and ozone. It was a sound that should have instilled primal fear, an instinct to flee, to hide, to simply give up. But John just sighed, a sound of weary patience, not despair. He adjusted his grip on the hammer. Right. So that's secure. Now, about that power conduit I hooked up earlier. It might be able to handle a bit more juice if we... Greenie and Silvery stared at each other, their alien forms drooping, their multifaceted eyes wide with a dawning, terrifying realization. This was it. This was the true horror. Not the dying planet, not the cosmic doom, but the human's response to it. He heard the sound of the world ending, the creak and rumble of its final agonizing journey, and he treated it like a broken-down farm implement. This wasn't a world to be warned. It was a dimension of pure, unadulterated human nightmare. Because for humans, the sound of the apocalypse isn't a cue for terror. The air inside the farmhouse was a bizarre mix of damp wood, the faint metallic tang of alien tech, and now, an acrid, pungent sting that made John's eyes water. He'd found a strange, iridescent, fungus-like corrosion rapidly spreading across the vital conduits of the partially repaired comms array he'd brought inside. It looked like something from a bad sci-fi movie, bubbling and shimmering, slowly eating through the alien alloys. His solution? A bottle of plain white vinegar from the pantry. He was hunched over the alien console, a greasy rag soaked in the sour-smelling liquid clutched in his hand, diligently scrubbing at the alien plague. The vinegar hissed and steamed faintly as it met the alien metal, and the corrosive growth visibly receded, leaving behind a slightly discolored but stable surface. Outside, the planet's grinding *grind rumble continued its slow, agonizing rhythm, punctuated by the ceaseless, resonant bong bong bong. Human. What in the void are you doing? Greenie shrieked, its chitinous form recoiling from the smell, its multifaceted eyes wide with a new flavor of horror. It and the Silvery stood huddled in the doorway, Bluey still recuperating on the floor, occasionally twitching. That noxious liquid. It will contaminate the alloys. It will initiate a secondary decay cascade. You are destroying the very components. John grunted, rubbing harder at a stubborn patch. The biting scent of vinegar was thick now, clinging to everything. Noxious. It's just vinegar. Good for cleaning. Cuts through grease. Kills mildew. Gets rid of rust. Figured it might work on whatever this shimmering gunk is. And hey, it's working, isn't it? He pointed with a vinegar-soaked finger to the now clear section of conduit. Silvery, usually the quietest, let out a distressed chitter. But our quantum molecular analysis indicated a bioluminescent, hyperadaptive metalloalga. It requires a focused sonic pulse or a highly specific antimatter spray to neutralize. Not a fermented fruit derivative. Its complex eyes seemed to glaze over in utter disbelief. This is primitive. Illogical. It should not work. Well, it does, John said simply, wiping his hands on his overalls, the smell of vinegar clinging to his skin. He leaned back, surveying his work. The glowing corrosion was gone, and the comms array's signal indicator had miraculously stabilized, a steady green bar replacing the erratic flickering. Sometimes the simple stuff works best. Don't need fancy sonic pulses when a bit of elbow grease and a cheap cleaning agent will do the trick. He offered the bottle of vinegar to Greenie. Want to try? Might help with the smell, too. Greenie and Silvery stared at the bottle as if it were a bomb, then back at the now clean alien tech. The relentless gray and rumble outside, the death knell bong, and the swirling, chaotic sky all faded into the background as their processing units struggled to reconcile what they were seeing. A catastrophic alien biocorrosion threatening their last hope of escape had been defeated by a mundane, sour-smelling liquid. This was beyond comprehension. Their advanced scientific minds, their millennia of accumulated knowledge, offered no explanation. The sheer, overwhelming helplessness they felt was not just because their world was ending, but because the human facing it was using methods so utterly alien to their understanding, yet so infuriatingly effective. They exchanged a look, a silent, telepathic agreement passing between them. This wasn't just a planet with illogical inhabitants. This was a place where the rules of the universe bent to sheer, ignorant stubbornness. Earth wasn't just a world. It was a living, breathing nightmare dimension where common sense defied cosmic law, and the apocalypse itself could be cleaned away with a rag and a bottle of vinegar. And they were trapped in it, smelling of John's primitive yet undeniable victory. The pungency of vinegar still hung in the air, but now it was overshadowed by a new, more horrifying blend of scents. The metallic tang from the alien ship had grown sharper, like blood mixed with ozone, and underneath it all, from the ground itself, emanated a faint, decaying sweetness, cloying and unsettling, like trampled flowers after a funeral. It was the smell of the world breaking apart, not just in sound or sight, but in its very essence. The *grind rumble of the planet's death rattle continued, a low, constant vibration through the farmhouse floorboards, accompanied by the ceaseless, maddening bong, bong of the gravitational harmonics failing. Outside, the sky churned, no longer just purple and red, but streaked with impossible greens and blues that pulsed with each seismic shudder. Greeny and Silvery, the two remaining conscious aliens, were no longer huddled together. They were pressed against opposite walls of John's kitchen, their multifaceted eyes spinning wildly, trying to process the overwhelming chaotic input. Their intricate forms flickered with agitated colors, their low clicks and whistles now sounding like broken static. They were visibly shaking, not just from the planetary tremors, but from sheer sensory overload. The smell, Greeny shrieked, its voice almost a static burst. It is the bioetheric decay of the planetary mantle, the very essence of life, decomposing into nothingness, and the sounds. They are rupturing our auditory sensors. It is too much! The universe is screaming. It clutched its head, its delicate appendages trembling. Silvery echoed, a desperate, high-pitched keening. The visual spectrum. It assaults our optical nerves. The gravitational shifts are causing spatial disorientation. We cannot filter it. This reality is hostile. It is insane. It began to bang its head softly against the wooden wall, a desperate, rhythmic tap, 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 as if trying to physically dislodge the invading sensations. John watched them, a grim look on his face. He'd just finished recalibrating a section of the comms array, now gleaming from its vinegar bath, its signal strength finally steady. He understood the feeling. That sweet, decaying smell, the endless, grinding noise. It was enough to drive a man mad. He looked at the aliens, at their futile attempts to shut out the dying world, and a memory surfaced. His grandmother, during a bad storm, stuffing cotton in her ears and praying with a rosary. Simple human coping. All right, calm down, John said, his voice cutting through their panic, though it sounded gruff even to his own ears. He reached for a roll of medical gauze from his first aid kit, usually for cuts and scrapes on the farm. No good banging your head on the wall. Doesn't stop the noise. He tore off a length. Here, stuff this in your ears. Might help a bit. Greeny and Silvery stared at the white gauze, as if it were an arcane artifact. What? What is this? Greeny stammered, its multifaceted eyes struggling to focus. A sound dampener? A primitive sonic filter? It's cotton, John explained, pushing a piece gently towards Greeny's auditory orifice. Helps block out loud noises. Humans have been using it for a long time. He then tore off another piece, dabbing it with some of the remaining vinegar, the sharp scent still potent. And this helps with the bad smells, or at least gives you something else to smell. He held it out. The aliens, utterly bewildered, slowly took the offered gauze. Greeny gingerly poked the cotton into its auditory canal, its head cocked, listening to the muffled porgling. Silvery tentatively brought the vinegar-soaked gauze to its sensory apertures, its whole form shuddering. The absurdity of it was almost comical, yet desperately sad. They looked like grotesque, alien pilgrims, trying to ward off cosmic evil with mundane charms. The hollow weight of the empty cooking pot in John's hand felt heavier than any wrench or hammer. The pantry shelves, usually stocked to bursting, now gaped with mocking emptiness. Cans of beans, bags of flour, even the last jar of pickled beets, all gone, consumed in the frenetic, food-fueled nights since the aliens crashed. The constant bong asterisk from the earth, and the agonizing asterisk grind rumble of continents tearing themselves apart, no longer sounded like a death knell. They sounded like his stomach rumbling, amplified 1,000 times. He turned from the empty pantry, the metal pot still clutched in his hand, its smooth, cool surface, a stark contrast to the throbbing warmth of the farmhouse. Bluey, still pale but now mobile, sat wrapped in a blanket on a kitchen chair, its multifaceted eyes dull. Greeny and Silvery, still with their cotton-stuffed ears and vinegar-soaked gauze, huddled near the stove, their forms flickering with nervous energy. The smell of decay from outside, that cloying, sweet rot, had permeated even the thick walls of the farmhouse. Human, Greeny's muffled voice squeaked, its clicks less frantic now, more resigned. Our bioscans indicate critical nutrient depletion within your physical form. And your companions are exhibiting similar signs of energetic decay. Is this a feature of your apocalypse? To starve slowly while the planet tears itself apart? John sighed, setting the pot down with a soft clang that echoed in the hungry silence. He rubbed a hand over his stubbled jaw. Nope, just ran out of food. Happens. Didn't exactly plan for 3 extra mouths, and a global cataclysm when I bought groceries last week. He kicked at a loose floorboard. Not a feature, just bad timing. He looked at his aliens, then out the window at the churning, hostile sky. The vibrant, impossible colors of the collapsing reality outside seemed to mock his mundane, human hunger. Silvery, its voice trembling even through the muffled gauze, pointed a delicate appendage at the empty pot. But there is nothing. No rations. No nutrient paste. No processed caloric supplements. What is the logical course of action now, John? To cease all function, to conserve energy for the final moments. Its posture conveyed utter, total surrender. Cease function? Nah, John scoffed, shaking his head. Don't just give up because the larder's empty. Means we gotta go get more. There's still stuff out there. He glanced at his shotgun, leaning in the corner by the back door, and his well-worn hunting jacket hanging on a peg. The deer usually come through the lower pasture this time of year. Or maybe some rabbits. The aliens stared, their complex eyes widening. Hunt? With a projectile weapon? Amidst a planet-wide cataclysm? John, the very ground is unstable. The atmosphere is toxic. Your hunting prey would be contaminated. And you would be exposed to the unraveling. Greenie shrieked, its form flaring with renewed panic. John shrugged, already pulling on his boots. Contaminated or not, a man's gotta eat. And a hungry man ain't much good for fixing starships or saving aliens, is he? He reached for his jacket, the familiar weight of it a small comfort. Besides, I've been hunting in worse weather. A little planetary death isn't going to stop me from putting food on the table. He grabbed his shotgun, the cool, oiled steel a solid presence in his hands. The constant bong and asterisk gry and rumble outside seemed to intensify. But John paid them no mind. His focus was singular, primal. Because when humanity faces the void, when everything collapses, some people don't see the end. They see a new kind of hunger, a new kind of cold, and a new reason to grab a rifle and go look for dinner. The aliens, witnessing this sheer, unfathomable will to live, even to hunt on a dying toxic world, finally understood. This human, this Earth, it wasn't just a world. The cold bit at John's exposed face, stinging his cheeks raw. He trudged back towards the farmhouse, the thin carcass of a rabbit, still warm, clutched in one gloved hand. The air tasted of ice and that unsettling, decaying sweetness from the dying planet, a cloying perfume that clung to his coat. The relentless bong asterisk of the Earth's death knell was a dull ache behind his eyes, a counterpoint to the agonizing asterisk gray and rumble that vibrated up from the frozen ground through his heavy boots. Every step was a battle against the trembling Earth. He pushed open the farmhouse door, letting in a gust of frigid, alien-smelling air. Bluey, still wrapped in its blanket, shivered on the chair, greeny and silvery, their faces still muffled with cotton and vinegar-soaked gauze, huddled close to the old stove, their forms flickering with a nervous, faint light. The smell of the raw rabbit, earthy and a little bloody, instantly cut through the stale air. "I have retrieved sustenance, John!" Greeny's voice, muffled but urgent, clicked. It pointed a delicate appendage at the rabbit. "Our scanners confirm it is organic, but its bioreadings are highly aberrant, likely contaminated by the planetary decay. It is not safe for consumption." John merely grunted, heading straight for the old butcher block. He pulled out his sharpest knife, the cold steel gleaming under the dim lantern light. He had no time for alien bioscanners or their warnings of aberrant readings. He had mouths to feed, including his own. Aberrant or not, it's meat. And meat means calories. You want to survive, you eat what you can get. He laid the rabbit down, the faint warmth of its body against the cold wood, the scent of fresh blood primal and real, filled the small kitchen. Silvery, its entire body trembling, backed away from the side of the gleaming blade. But the preparation, the dismemberment, this is savagery. We ingest synthesized nutrients, not the remains of once living creatures, especially those infused with the very essence of a dying world. Its multifaceted eyes were wide, with a revulsion so profound it seemed to transcend species. John ignored their pleas, his movements economical, practiced. He skinned the rabbit with swift, precise cuts, the fur peeling back to reveal pale, taut flesh. He cleaned it quickly, efficiently, then sliced it into pieces for the pot. The image of a Thanksgiving feast, piled high with turkey and potatoes and gravy, flashed unbidden in his mind, a sharp, painful contrast to this meager, hard-won meal. But even thin broth was better than an empty stomach. Savagery? It's called living, John countered, dropping the pieces into the pot. He added a few root vegetables he'd managed to dig up from his cellar garden. We eat, we survive. Don't eat, we die. Simple as that. He stirred the pot, the aroma of cooking meat and vegetables, however faint, a welcome change from the pervasive scent of decay. As the stew simmered, the small kitchen was filled with the stark reality of human survival. The low bubbling of the pot, the rhythmic draught gray and asterisk grind rumble of the world outside, and the terrified, bewildered aliens watching John eat his meal. He offered them some. They recoiled, disgusted, unable to comprehend. Greeny and Silvery exchanged a long, horrified glance. They had witnessed the human fix their ship with primitive tools, fight planetary decay with vinegar, and now hunt and consume, contaminated, meat from a dying world. They had given their warnings of cosmic doom, and the human had shrugged. He had seen the apocalypse, and he had simply adapted. This wasn't a world, they realized, with chilling certainty. This was a realm where the impossible was mundane, where the catastrophic was just an inconvenience, and where life clung on with a terrifying, unyielding grip. This was not a dimension to merely observe. This was a nightmare. The silence of the abandoned town was a different kind of oppressive than the farm's isolation. Here, the absence of human noise, no distant rumble of traffic, no faint hum of electricity, no barking dogs, felt like a held breath, a collective gasp frozen in time. John gripped the cold steering wheel of his old pickup truck, the engine sputtering unevenly, its sound a jarring intrusion in the unnatural quiet. Even the planet's relentless bong-bong-bong asterisk and the grinding asterisk grind rumble seemed muted here, swallowed by the eerie hush of empty streets. He pulled up to the general store, its windows boarded over, painted with crude, desperate strokes. But it wasn't just the boarded windows that caught his eye. It was the crimson mark, a stark, rough-painted red cross slapped right across the plywood. Then he saw another on the pharmacy, and another on the clinic, a chilling pattern repeated on every public building. The sight made a cold knot tighten in his gut, a familiar human dread that transcended the cosmic horror. Crammed in the truck bed, Bluey, now mostly recovered but still wrapped in a blanket, shifted nervously. Greeny and Silvery, still with their cotton-stuffed ears and vinegar-soaked masks, clacked their delicate appendages. Their multifaceted eyes, usually fixed on the apocalyptic sky, were now locked onto the crimson symbols. "John, what signifies these markings?" Greeny's muffled voice, barely audible over the truck's uneven idle, was tinged with fresh panic. "Our data correlates similar human glyphs with contagion zones. Or perhaps mass casualties. Is this a local manifestation of the planetary unraveling? A localized biohazard?" John cut the engine, plunging the street into deeper silence, broken only by the planet's distant groans. He exhaled a plume of visible breath into the frigid air. "Contagion zone. Mass casualties. Yeah, something like that." He kicked the truck door open, the sound echoing harshly. Means someone was sick. Or they're trying to keep people out. Or both. He grabbed his worn backpack, its contents rattling faintly. Either way, it's not good. But we still need fuel. And maybe some more of that aspirin for Bluey. Silvery leaned forward, its masked face contorted in an expression of alien bewilderment. But the planetary collapse is accelerating. Gravitational shears, subspace ruptures. And you concern yourself with a localized contagion. Why do you not flee this area? Why these primitive warnings? Because people get sick. Even when the world's ending, John said, his voice flat. He pointed to a rusted fuel pump across the street. And if we don't get fuel, we're not going anywhere. These primitive warnings mean something. They mean people tried. They held the line, at least for a while. He stepped out onto the cracked asphalt, the ground vibrating faintly beneath his boots. The sweet, decaying smell was stronger here, mingling with the faint, unsettling scent of stagnant water and dust. He began to walk towards the gas station, his gaze sweeping the deserted street, not for alien threats, but for human ones. Looters, other desperate survivors, signs of what had truly happened here. The red crosses were more than just paint. They were a testament to a different kind of apocalypse, a human one, playing out alongside the cosmic one. The aliens watched him go, a terrifying truth settling into their consciousness. This was not merely a planetary disaster. This was a place where humanity, facing the death of everything, still put up signs, still tried to warn, still fought sickness, even as the universe screamed. This Earth wasn't just a dying world. It was a nightmare dimension of defiant, incomprehensible human struggle. And John, with his practical, stubborn focus on fuel and aspirin amidst the ruin, was its most terrifying inhabitant. The truck rumbled to life, the roar of its ancient engine echoing obscenely loud in the silent, red-cross streets of the abandoned town. John shifted into gear, the old pickup lurching forward over crumbling asphalt. The air was thick with the scent of raw gasoline from the jerry cans he'd managed to find, mingling with the pervasive sweet decaying perfume of the dying world and the faint, unsettling smell of stagnant water from the gutters. The ceaseless bong-bong, bunga, and the agonizing asterisk Gryan rumble of the planet had intensified, feeling like the very road beneath them was a drumhead being slowly beaten and scraped. Bluey, still bundled in its blanket, shivered in the truck bed, its multifaceted eyes wide with a new kind of dread. Greeny and Silvery, their faces still obscured by the cotton-stuffed gauze, clacked their limbs frantically. Outside the small confines of the truck's cab, the world seemed to warp. Buildings leaned at impossible angles. Cracks in the earth pulsed with an eerie, violet light, widening as the truck passed. The sky above was a churning, chaotic canvas of impossible colors, twisting and swirling as if trying to tear itself open. "John!" The very landscape is undergoing rapid deformation. Greeny's muffled voice was a strained whisper of clicks. It pointed a trembling appendage at a house that seemed to melt inward. The structural integrity of this entire sector is failing. We are detecting localized gravitational fluctuations of extreme magnitude. It is asterisk collapsing. John gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. The road ahead was fissured, buckled. He swerved to avoid a sinkhole that had opened up in the middle of the street, swallowing a street lamp whole. The truck bounced violently, throwing the aliens against the sides of the bed. "Yeah, I see it," he muttered, eyes narrowed in concentration. "Road's getting pretty bad. Gotta find a way around before we end up in one of those holes." He wasn't looking at the collapsing buildings with awe or fear, but with the frustration of a man trying to navigate a poorly maintained country road. Silvery, its entire form vibrating with terror, emitted a high-pitched keening sound. Around? "John, the entire local reality is unraveling. Our sensors indicate a probability of immediate planar inversion. This is not a bad road. This is the void. Why do you not simply stop? To accept the inevitable?" Its cotton-stuffed head snapped towards him, its eyes filled with incomprehension. "The world is shrinking. It is becoming nothing. Why do you still drive?" John glanced in the rearview mirror, seeing the panicked alien faces, then back at the shifting road ahead. Stop? And do what? Sit around and wait for the roof to fall in? Nah, we need to get back to the farm. That comms array still needs a bit of tweaking, and Bluey needs to rest in a proper bed, not this rattling metal box. He accelerated, the old truck roaring defiance at the dying world. A massive fissure ripped across the road just behind them, sending up a cloud of dust and alien glowing debris. The truck, somehow, kept going. The aliens huddled closer, their reality reduced to the vibrating metal box, the smell of gasoline and decay, and the unyielding human who stubbornly steered them through the apocalypse. Their world, their universe, was expanding into infinite chaos, yet for John, it seemed to be shrinking to the immediate, tangible task: getting back to the farm. Greenie let out a soft, shuddering sound, almost a sob. He doesn't see it. He truly does not comprehend the magnitude. He reduces the cosmic end to a broken road, to a need for rest. Because for humans, when the universe decides to contract, to implode, to become nothing, some of them just see their immediate bubble, their immediate path. They don't look at the dying cosmos, they look at the next pothole. The farmhouse shuddered, not from a new impact, but from a sustained, deep vibration that had steadily worsened since John had returned from the ghost town. The bong asterisk of the dying planet was now less a tolling bell and more a relentless migraine, a physical assault on the inner ear. The asterisk grind or rumble was a constant, unsettling undercurrent, the sound of the world's very bones scraping together. Yet, cutting through this apocalyptic symphony, a new sound had begun. It was faint at first, a distant, echoey sound, like wind chimes catching a strange breeze. Then it sharpened, became clearer, utterly impossible. Laughter. Not joyful, not truly menacing, but a hollow, disembodied mirth, as if carried on a draft from a long empty hall. It seemed to swirl, sometimes from the rafters, sometimes from beneath the floorboards, sometimes from just outside the window, like the spectral echoes of a drunken crowd in a forgotten tavern. It was thin, cold, and utterly out of place. John, hunched over the alien comms array he'd brought inside, trying to solder a hairline crack in a shimmering crystal conduit, dropped his soldering iron with a clatter. His head snapped up, eyes narrowed. Bluey, still pale but now pacing restlessly, let out a distressed gurgle. Greenie and Silvery, their cotton-stuffed ears useless against this new auditory assault, began to tremble, their forms flickering like overloaded circuits. What is that?" Greenie shrieked, its muffled voice a static-filled whisper, its multifaceted eyes darting frantically. "A psychoacoustic weapon? A distortion in the ether? It is asterisk laughing at us. The very void is mocking our despair." The hollow laughter echoed again, a ripple of cold, dispassionate amusement seeming to come from the empty parlor. It sent a shiver down John's spine, despite his best efforts to remain pragmatic. He picked up his soldering iron, though his hand was less steady now. Laughing? Nah. Probably just the atmospheric shifts messing with the acoustics. Or maybe a loose shutter rattling in the wind, making a funny noise. It's an old house. He tried to dismiss it, to rationalize the utterly inexplicable. Silvery, its entire body quivering, pressed itself into a corner, its multifaceted eyes wide with a terror that transcended any physical threat. Loose shutter? John, our quantum temporal sensors are registering temporal echoes. These are residual energy signatures of past emotional events. The dying planet is manifesting its own fragmented memories. Its despair is audible. It let out a high-pitched, almost painful shriek as another ripple of cold laughter ghosted through the kitchen. This is not natural. This is a psychic attack from a dying reality. John sighed, setting down the soldering iron. He stood, walked to the parlor door, and peered into the empty room. Nothing. Just the faint, disembodied echoes of laughter. He kicked at a loose floorboard. Sounds like an echo, all right, but it ain't the planet. Probably just some weird resonance from your ship, or that new hole in the ground. He pointed vaguely towards the window, where the sky outside pulsed with angry, impossible lights. Makes everything sound funny. Happens. He returned to the comms array, picking up his tools again, forcing himself to focus on the task at hand. The laughter continued, a constant chilling presence, a sound of merriment without joy, echoing from a reality that was actively tearing itself apart. The aliens watched him, completely bewildered, completely horrified. Their advanced senses perceived a dying god's mocking laughter, a psychic assault from the very fabric of space-time. And the human? The human heard a funny noise, an echo, a loose shutter. Because that's the truth about humans. When the universe starts to unravel and the fabric of reality itself laughs at their impending doom, some of them just find it inconvenient. The farmhouse shuddered, not from a new impact, but from a sustained, deep vibration that had steadily worsened since John had returned from the ghost town. The bong asterisk of the dying planet was now less a tolling bell and more a relentless migraine, a physical assault on the inner ear. The asterisk grand rumble was a constant, unsettling undercurrent, the sound of the world's very bones scraping together. Yet, cutting through this apocalyptic symphony, a new sound had begun. John, hunched over the alien comms array he'd brought inside, trying to solder a hairline crack in a shimmering crystal conduit, dropped his soldering iron with a clatter. His head snapped up, eyes narrowed. Bluey sat nearby, shivering, while Greeny and Silvery, their forms flickering nervously, tried to make sense of the new, impossible auditory inputs. But those were background noise now. Suddenly, a sharp, insistent rapping echoed through the heavy wooden door. Knock, knock, knock. The cosmic sound seemed to fade into the background. The phantom laughter, which had been a constant chilling presence, ceased. The aliens, for the first time, were utterly silent, their multifaceted eyes snapping towards the door. This wasn't a planetary tremor. This wasn't a strange echo. This was direct. Intentional. John froze, his soldering iron hissing faintly as it touched nothing. His entire posture changed in an instant. The calm, focused problem solver vanished, replaced by a coiled tension, a primal alertness. His eyes narrowed, not with mechanical assessment, but with a hunter's caution. His hand moved without conscious thought, dropping the iron and reaching for the shotgun leaning against the wall by the back door. The familiar weight of the cold steel, the solid click as he checked the safety, cut through the house's tense silence. "John! What is that new sound?" Greeny's muffled voice was a desperate whisper. A new atmospheric anomaly? A localized pressure wave? Another sharp, louder rap. "Knock! Knock!" John didn't answer. He moved with a quiet, predatory grace, surprisingly light on his feet for a man his size. He peered through a crack in the window blinds, his face grim. Outside, a figure stood on his porch, silhouetted against the swirling purple-red sky. Another human. A stranger. It's another human, John," Silvery shrieked, its entire body quivering, its voice filled with utter bewilderment. "Why the weapon? Why the aggression? Is this one hostile? It shares your genetic markers." John's thumb brushed the safety off the shotgun. The soft snick was almost inaudible amidst the distant planetary groans, but it was deafening in the charged silence of the room. His voice, when it came, was low, rough, utterly devoid of the patient pragmatism he'd shown the aliens. "Hostile? Don't know yet. But you don't come knocking like that on a locked door unless you want something. And out here, what people want usually ain't good." His eyes were hard, fixed on the figure outside. This was a different kind of apocalypse, a human one, and John instinctively understood its rules. The aliens watched, utterly bewildered. The planet outside was tearing itself apart. The universe was unraveling. And yet, this human, this John, had just become a hunter, a predator, at the sound of another of his own kind. His face was transformed, no longer merely weary or annoyed, but etched with raw, protective suspicion. They exchanged terrified glances. They had warned him of cosmic doom, of planetary death. He had merely shrugged. But a knock on the door, the sight of a stranger's face, had instantly brought him to a state of primal, deadly readiness. This wasn't just a world, they realized with profound horror. This was a dimension where the greatest threat wasn't the collapsing cosmos, but the other beings, the other humans, who might be waiting at your door. And that, more than any collapsing reality, was the true, terrifying nightmare. The cold wind was a living thing, a biting, empty presence that whistled through the skeletal remains of what had once been a bustling town square. It carried dust, grit, and the faint, lingering scent of damp rot and ozone, but mostly it carried nothing. It felt like the breath of a ghost, passing through hollow spaces where laughter, commerce, and human voices once echoed. John drove his old pickup slowly, The engine a low growl that felt like a sacrilege in the profound silence. The cosmic bong bong. Bong asterisk and the grinding asterisk grind rumble of the dying planet were still there, an insistent thrum beneath the tires, but here they seemed secondary to the sheer terrifying emptiness. He pulled the truck to a stop near a boarded-up general store, its front door hanging ajar, creaking rhythmically in the mournful wind. Inside the truck bed, Bluey shivered, wrapped tight in its blanket, greeny and silvery, their faces still muffled by the cotton-stuffed, vinegar-soaked gauze, stared out at the desolate scene. Their multifaceted eyes swept over empty storefronts, overturned market stalls, and a lone, broken swing set in what had once been a town park. "John, this place, it is utterly devoid of life signatures." Greeny's muffled voice was a desperate whisper, tinged with a new, unsettling horror. "Our bioscanners detect no animalia, no flora. Only the residual decay of organic matter. It is a tomb, a silent, cold, empty tomb." Its form flickered with frantic, agitated light. John cut the engine, and the silence descended, heavy and absolute, broken only by the creak of the door and the planet's agonizing groans. He grabbed his trusty shotgun, its familiar weight, a cold comfort in his hands. Tomb or not, there might be something salvageable. Food. Tools. Anything that wasn't stripped already. And a good place to set up the comms array. Higher ground. Less interference. He kicked open his door, stepping out into the biting wind. The ground vibrated faintly beneath his boots, a constant reminder of the cosmic chaos. Silvery, its entire body trembling, pointed a delicate appendage at the abandoned marketplace. But the emptiness, the sheer, oppressive absence. It is worse than the direct threat of your planetary collapse. The residual energy readings indicate a sudden, catastrophic exodus, or worse. It clutched its head, its voice rising to a high-pitched keening. "This is not the end of a world, John. This is the aftermath of one, and the stillness. It consumes all hope." "Hope ain't gonna put food on the table," John grunted, ignoring the alien's despair. He scanned the street, his eyes missing nothing: a half-rotted apple on the ground, a discarded tire, a faint, almost invisible track in the dust. His focus was entirely on the practical. We don't need hope. We need supplies. And a signal. He started walking towards the general store, his boots crunching on the broken glass and debris. The wind howled through the empty market stalls, a sound like a chorus of unseen mourners. He paused by a dilapidated fruit stand, its wooden slats rotting, a single shriveled orange clinging to a forgotten corner. He touched it, then let it drop. "Too far gone," he muttered. This wasn't just physical desolation. It was the chilling sense of absence, the feeling of a world abruptly emptied. Yet John didn't dwell on the loss. He simply processed the facts. No good fruit here. Move on. The aliens watched him, a profound, chilling realization settling over them. This human, this impossible John, wasn't just surviving the apocalypse. He was surviving its ghosts. He walked through a silent, empty marketplace, a monument to human loss and cosmic horror, and saw only a logistical challenge. Because for humans, when the world falls silent and the very wind carries the memory of absence, some of them don't fall to despair. They just keep looking for what's left, for what can be used, for the next practical step. The cold, empty wind followed John into the shell of what used to be a small hardware store. Dust, thick and gray, coated everything like a shroud, catching the faint, swirling purple light filtering from the outside. The pervasive, sweet decay from the dying planet still clung to the air, mixing with the metallic tang of old tools and the stale scent of abandoned space. The bong asterisk and the grinding asterisk grind rumble were distant background noise here, a deep, unsettling bass beat to the profound quiet. He was rummaging through overturned shelves looking for anything useful: wire, tape, maybe some heavier gauge tools. Bluey, still wrapped tight in its blanket, shivered in the truck outside. Greeny and Silvery, their senses muffled by the cotton-stuffed, vinegar-soaked gauze, hovered nervously near the doorway, their multifaceted eyes sweeping the desolate interior, trying to find meaning in the absolute stillness. John kicked aside a scattered pile of warped lumber, his gaze snagged on something small, half buried under a film of ancient dust. A teddy bear. Its synthetic fur was matted, one button eye missing, the other staring blankly up at the cracked ceiling. It lay on its side, as if dropped in a hurry, forgotten, left behind. The dust had settled on it evenly, a silent testament to the passage of time since its owner had vanished into the chaos. He reached down, his calloused fingers gently brushing away the dust from its head. The bear was light, almost hollow. For a moment, his usual pragmatism wavered, replaced by a deep, quiet ache. This wasn't a broken machine. This was a child's forgotten comfort. A small, intensely human piece of a life left behind in the cosmic unraveling. It was a stark, brutal contrast to the grand planetary apocalypse roaring outside. "John, what is that object?" Greeny's muffled voice cut through the silence, tinged with a fresh, raw horror. Its entire form was flaring with agitated light. Our sensors detect no life, but a strong residual emotional imprint. It is an artifact of profound sorrow, a relic of innocence, abandoned to the void. Silvery, usually more composed, let out a shuddering keen. This is worse than the contagion, worse than the planetary demise. To see such fragility, such vulnerable life, simply left behind. It speaks of an abandonment that eclipses all cosmic horror. This is a dimension of casual, terrifying loss. Its multifaceted eyes locked onto the dusty teddy bear in John's hand. John held the bear for a moment longer, its weight a heavy counterpoint to the cosmic lightness of alien alloys. He turned it over in his hands, then placed it carefully on a higher shelf, out of the dust, leaning it against a faded can of paint. It wasn't fixing anything. It wasn't saving anything, but it felt right. A small human gesture in a world that was losing all meaning. He wiped his hands on his overalls, the pragmatic farmer returning. "Just a kid's toy," he mumbled, moving to examine a sturdy workbench. "Someone left it. Now, about that welding torch." The alien stared at the teddy bear, then at John, who was already back to work. They had seen the cosmic end. They had witnessed humanity's stubborn refusal to die. But this quiet moment of reverence for a dusty toy amidst galactic destruction, followed by an immediate return to pragmatic work, shattered them. They understood the terror of an unraveling universe, but they could not comprehend the human capacity for both profound tenderness and relentless, unyielding survival in the face of it. This Earth, they realized, wasn't just a world. It was a nightmare dimension. A nightmare where even in the face of cosmic annihilation and profound human loss, some creatures just kept going, finding quiet ways to acknowledge the past, while relentlessly building towards an uncertain future. And that, more than any collapsing star, was truly terrifying. The wind carried a new scent, not just the metallic tang of ozone or the cloying sweetness of decay, but something else entirely. It was a faint, yet unmistakable perfume of fresh spring blossoms, bright and hopeful, clashing violently with the dying world. It smelled like daffodils pushing through damp earth, like apple blossoms unfurling after a long winter. This fragile, vibrant aroma wafted through the cracked windows of John's farmhouse, mingling with the deeper, more unsettling smells, creating a bizarre, sickening tapestry of life and death. John paused, his gloved fingers tightening a nut on the makeshift antenna he was trying to secure to the exterior wall. He sniffed the air, a frown creasing his brow. The relentless bong-bong. Bong asterisk of the planetary death knell and the grinding asterisk grand rumble of the world's core were constant, but this sweet floral scent was a jarring note in the symphony of cosmic chaos. Outside, the sky churned with impossible colors. Yet here, beneath a partially collapsed shed, a patch of hardy wildflowers bloomed in defiance, their petals impossibly bright against the alien glowing dust. Bluey, now moving with more purpose, but still wrapped in its blanket, quivered. Greeny and Silvery, their faces still muffled by their cotton and vinegar masks, recoiled from the open window, their multifaceted eyes fixed on the patch of defiant blooms. "John, The fragrance Greenie's muffled voice was a series of distressed clicks, almost hysterical. Our bioatmospheric sensors detect a surge in organic volatile compounds. This is the scent of asterisk growth, but it emanates from soil saturated with the cosmic decay. It is a violation, life asserting itself over absolute death. John grunted, pushing a stray hair from his eyes. Yeah, smells nice, doesn't it? Wildflowers always pop up after a hard winter or a big storm. Nature finds a way. He tightened the last nut, testing the antenna. Doesn't mean the signal's getting through, but at least it smells a bit better than yesterday. He glanced at the blooms, a faint, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement. Silvery, its form flickering with extreme agitation, jabbed a delicate appendage towards the patch of flowers, then back towards the distant horizon where the sky was violently tearing itself open. But the data, John, the planetary core is collapsing. The very essence of organic life should be dissolving. This is asterisk unnatural. Like flowers blooming on a mass grave, it is a grotesque mockery of reality. The universe should not permit such defiance. Well, the universe ain't always as neat and tidy as you'd like it, is it? John countered, stepping back to admire his handiwork. The antenna, a hodgepodge of alien tech and salvaged farm equipment, stood firm. Flowers bloom where they bloom. Doesn't matter if the world's ending or not, they just do it. He wiped his hands on his overalls. The smell of damp earth and spring flowers now clinging to his skin, a defiant scent of the impossible. The aliens watched him, their processing units overwhelmed. Their cosmic understanding of life and death, of entropy and decay, was being fundamentally violated. The human, this impossible creature, saw life flourishing in the heart of cosmic death, not as a horrifying anomaly, but as a simple, expected fact. Because that's the thing about humans. When the world is screaming its last breath, and the very ground is poisoned with decay, some of them don't see despair. They see a single stubborn flower pushing through the cracks, and they think, well, look at that. Life goes on. And in that moment, as the sweet scent of defiance filled the air, the aliens were utterly convinced. Earth wasn't just a nightmare dimension. It was a nightmare dimension where even death itself refused to be absolute, and that was the most terrifying horror of all. The silence had deepened. Not the absolute silence of a vacuum, but the profound, unnerving quiet that settles after a great disaster, a hush over a world emptying out. The bong 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 asterisk of the planetary death knell had faded to a mere throb in the ground, a phantom vibration. The grinding asterisk grind rumble was intermittent, like a dying beast taking long, shuddering breaths. The air still carried the cloying scent of cosmic decay, now interwoven with the almost offensive perfume of those impossibly blooming wildflowers, a bizarre olfactory assault of death and defiant life. John, however, wasn't listening to the quiet or sniffing the strange air. He was focused. He had salvaged a piece of the alien ship's hull, a shimmering, impossibly dense alloy, and was trying to reshape it. He needed a stronger, more focused antenna for the comms array, something less prone to the subspace ruptures the aliens kept yammering about. He had fired up his old forge in the barn, the smell of coal smoke and hot metal, a comforting, familiar scent amidst the alien smells. He lifted his heavy hammer. The sound ripped through the fragile quiet of the collapsing world, sharp and defiant. It echoed, not just through the barn, but seemed to ring out into the dying landscape, a solitary metallic shout. Sparks, hot and orange, exploded from the alien alloy as the hammer struck, raining down on the dirt floor. The metal, unnaturally resistant, glowed a vibrant, alien green under the force of the blow. Bluey, greeny, and silvery, who had been huddled in the barn, their multifaceted eyes wide with vague anxiety, shrieked as one. They scattered, pressing themselves against the far wall, forms flickering with raw terror. Their cotton-stuffed ears, meant to muffle the cosmic chaos, were useless against this new, sudden, quadrintentional assault on the quiet. "John! What in the void was that?" Greenie's muffled voice was a strained, desperate shriek. A weapon discharge? A localized energy spike? You introduced a shockwave into the already unstable dimensional fabric. Its delicate appendages trembled, pointing at the glowing, ringing metal. John grunted, lifting the hammer again. Sweat beaded on his brow, mingling with coal dust. His muscles, long honed by farm work, tensed with the effort. Weapon discharge? Nah. Just hammering. Trying to bend this stuff into shape. Tough as old boots, this metal. He brought the hammer down again. Clang! The sound was even louder this time, a defiant crack in the silence, resonating deep in the chest. The alien alloy shrieked under the impact, sparks spraying in a dazzling, fiery arc. The metal, impossibly, began to give, slowly deforming under John's relentless, rhythmic blows. Silvery, its entire body quivering, stammered. But the quiet, John. The planetary energies are receding. The very universe is attempting to silence itself. And you create this jarring, violent noise. You defy the cosmic entropy with a hammering tool. Its multifaceted eyes were fixed on John, no longer with terror of the apocalypse, but with something far deeper. Utter, profound, terrified incomprehension of Asterix Kim. John paused, wiping his brow with the back of a gloved hand. He held up the glowing, partially reshaped alien metal. Defy entropy? Nah, just making a thing. This bit needs to be flat, and that bit needs a curve. And you can't do that quietly with a hammer, can you? He picked up the tongs, turning the alien metal, assessing it. Almost there. He lifted the hammer once more, a picture of determined, stubborn, human will against a backdrop of cosmic collapse. Clang! The sound rang out again, a final, emphatic statement. The aliens huddled together, their forms flickering like failing lights. The planetary sounds were still there, a distant, dying hum, but John's anvil strikes, his defiant act of creation, overshadowed them all.